Dato, distinguished speakers this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome back to the afternoon session. I'm not sure whether we still have people down in the dining area or we're all back here, but we would start the session right now. We are having a very interesting session right now on future-ready banking, optimizing technology, talent, and innovation. And I think these are the three key factors that will determine the future of banking. And the integration of technology and people is key to the competitive success of banks. And here on this panel, we have a very distinguished panel of speakers to share their wealth of experience with all of us. We will have each of them to perhaps speak for between 8 to 10 minutes, and then we could have some time for questions and interaction. Let me very quickly introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Our first speaker is a very well-known personality in the banking and technology area in Malaysia, Mr. Peng, founder and executive chairman of Silverlake Axis. Mr. Goh founded the Silverlake Group back in 1989, and he has won many awards, including the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur Award of the Year, as well as many other awards, ASEAN Awards and the World Chinese Economic Summit Award. And Forbes in 2015 described Mr. Goh as the first technology billionaire in Malaysia. Mr. Goh was also conferred a fellowship of the Academy of Sciences, Malaysia. And very interestingly, that I'm sure not many people know, he studied in Japan and graduated in electronics engineering from one of the Japanese universities. And he still speaks very, very good Japanese. I have the honor of working together with him in MACROKIOSK, the Malaysia-Japan Economic Association, where Mr. Goh is a key player in our executive committee. Our next speaker is Dato Henry Goh, co-founder and the group CEO of Macro Kiosk Group, another digital technology company, which he founded with his brothers almost 20 years ago when they were still students at university. And I think Henry and his brothers, Kenny and CS, made their first million when they are still students, and I think that's interesting. So MACROKIOSK has grown, and he has become a major provider of technology services in the country. Henry holds a MBA degree, and also is a winner of the Ernst & Young Emerging Entrepreneur Award. Our next speaker, Mr. Matthew Chen from China, is joining us also virtually from Hong Kong. Matthew is the CEO of the Sunline Holdings, which is a very rapidly growing company from China that is involved in financial services and systems as well. And he has spearheaded the growth of Sunline into the region. So Matthew specializes in risk management as well as in other areas of banking solutions. So we are delighted to have him here with us in our summit. Our next speaker, Earoel Kennedy, leads ServiceNow customer outcomes teams delivering enterprise business transformation, the future of workforce transformation, and business value realization. And those of you who know ServiceNow may remember that some time ago, they were valued at a higher market cap than even IBM. So it is a unicorn in the USA. I'm delighted to have Earoel with us here today. She has diverse knowledge from many markets in North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So Earoel, thank you for joining us. Our next speaker, our last speaker for today, is Mr. Lin King Yao, who is a partner in Ernst & Young Consulting with 23 years of experience in the digital information technology, wealth, and banking consulting experiences. Yeoh holds a degree in computer science from University of Western Australia in Perth. So we have a very diverse and interesting panel, and I'm sure they will be able to share their valuable insights and knowledge with us. To start with, may I invite Mr. Goh Peng Wee to address us. Peng Wee, please.
Good afternoon. I have been talking about banking since IBM days, and this would be close to 40 over years. And you know what IBM taught us was to read a lot of books, and as you read more and more, you find that there are so many books to read that that you find that you can't remember any of them, right? And that I sum it up call all those books narratives. So today, I hope my charts can be up. Otherwise, I have to talk without the charts. Now, can we have the first page? So this is the so-called book written by, can we move on to the first page? So the book written by Charan. So Rethinking Competitive Advantage, the mindset of digital age, or new roles of, for the digital age. Yep. So if you read, I summarize all the points here, and there are 7 points, you can read through them. Now these are narratives, and actually it's very difficult to, while it appeals to your senses, but it's actually very difficult to learn from there. And I added one more important point, that is, it is no more good enough just to know what, but more important to know why and how. So narrative is usually the story of one hero, but standing on 1 million corpses, and maybe it's also a case of chances. And even no matter how many books you read, it still depends on chances. Now today, I would like to move on to the next page. Okay. Now this Dennis Sullivan actually got a prize just on May 25th. I believe it's May 23rd. And that is on topologies and kiosks, and unifying that two theories. Now I cut and paste what he said, that things could be broken into boxes. Now these are mental boxes or mathematical boxes, and you can paste all these boxes back to the full story. And of course that includes future. Now the other word that he used very often was symmetry. And if without symmetry, there could be things that eluded him. And I think that is the important point, that without symmetry as a guidance, it's very difficult to chart the path. And of course, there is another winner, that is field matter. Actually, it's called theory of rough path. And that is how you chart the paths in the so-called mathematical manifolds and non-manifold world. Now, I've been talking about boxes, symmetry, since 40 over years ago, and that was why when I developed the logo of Silverlake, I put symmetry at work below the logo. Now, the purpose of the company is to keep reminding people that whatever you do, research on symmetry. It doesn't matter whether you are in banking, whether you are in retail, whether you are in medical sciences, life sciences, mathematics, nuclear physics, work on symmetry. Now, so how symmetry relates to digital economy? The first most important thing is it links to partitioning, because you know we partition everything in digital economy. So because of 1 and 0, it has to be either 1 or 0, and a collection of 1 and 0, those are partitions. Now, why they are all spread all over the places, and they are actually linked together in a topological sense. So they are not really all over the places. Now, but if you separate that out, there are two views. One is called collapsing the reality, and the other one is called actually filling in the reality. I mean, it sounds very difficult, but actually we do that every day in our life. Now, so I will quickly jump conclusion, since we only have 8 minutes. Now, so if we break into boxes, actually it's not surprisingly, it has tracked the history of economics, which is supply side, demand side, fund side. Now, the new terms are like system side, technology side, and data side. Now, these are new terms. Now, supply side, demand side, of course, since Adam Smith, then the Wallacean's dynamic equilibrium, Samuelson's demand and supply curves, and so on and so forth. Of course, Alfred Marshall's dynamism, and so forth, so on and so forth. Now, the maybe more recent economic phenomena is the fund side, where US printed a lot of money, share prices keep on going up, and you just don't know why. But, of course, there are whys. But these are the 6 areas where you can break down further and research it in each of them. Of course, supply side, you have lots of economic books to read. Demand side may be less. Fund side may be even less. And as you move on to system side, technology side, and data side, it becomes very confusing. Now, I'll conclude on the banking side. Now, of course, it's no point talking, developing nothing. So for this 40 years, we developed actually several solutions. The first one is called stable banking, which is called SIBS. Basically, it focuses on cost-to-income ratio. Now, finally, it is not about digital. It's not all about digital, but it can be about cost and income ratio. Now, cost and income ratio, there's no need to worry about technology. For example, if you want to develop a good Rolls-Royce aeroplane engine, please don't use plastic, okay? Plastic may be a more advanced technology, but it is definitely useless in the plane engine. And that is basically when you need efficiency, high power, and so on, it is a different world. That is called stable banking. It's just like a plane engine, and the design has to be so. And when I developed that in 1990, and it's still jumping and kicking today, and that is already 30 years. But it won't change because cost-income ratio is still will remain very, very important. Now, the second one was developed about 10 years, slightly more than 10 years ago, as we see the pattern of people coming in behaving digital. Now, that is digital banking. Of course, it is very much looking from technological point of view how to adapt to different behaviors. Now, there are a lot of talks about data. You have my Sajatra data, paradoxes, but the data itself won't make money. Now, you really need to use data, and people must want you to use their data for you to make money. So that is data banking. Now, it's not just about data. Okay. And of course, in any-to-any banking is a community banking, because more and more people there will be collectives because of technologies, and people will do banking among themselves. But you know, this is not going to be super big size, the whole world involved type of banking. Is going to be a community type of banking. That will be community banking. And we have kicked off a few. Of course, it's still waiting for it to pick up the speed. Now, the last one, of course, is very technology-based, which is cloud infrastructure. And obviously, it's just like electricity, water. It's always better to put it in utility to have a lower cost. You don't want to have your water. You don't want to have your own dam. You don't want to have your own generator producing electricity. Sometimes you just share the infrastructure, and that would be the cloud infrastructure. Now, these are the 5 big products in Silverlake today covering everything you can think about banking. And of course, you can apply that to insurance, you can apply that to any industry, which of course we have other businesses. And maybe it's shocking. I started with $1, never raised a single cent, but dividend out 640 million US. Now, I just want to say how powerful mathematics can be. Okay, and that I encourage people to read, not because I want to show off, but I think it is my mission to tell people there are a lot of hidden treasures in mathematics. Now, to further, of course, the time is running out, and you can see that the charts on the technology, how you partition, and these are less interesting topic here. And we talk about Silverlake, which is less interesting here, what is our direction, and so on. And you, of course, you expect us to concentrate on all the product sides, and the supply side, and the demand side, and the fund side, and the technology side. So these are not surprises. Now, this is what I've mentioned. There must be something right. And that something right is able to answer the why, how, and what of things. And that is actually making use of mathematics. Now, I left IBM because there was 2 curves that I shown in the advanced management school. In 1986, I said, well, hardware cost is going down, but human cost is going up. So it's a risk or it's an opportunity. Well, it depends. If you convert the human resources into new services, new areas, it will be a huge opportunity for IBM. Unfortunately, IBM couldn't see that. I thought it's about time for me to go, and maybe I would set up something on my own. And that's how it started. Now, the rest of the charts are showing you how actually every day, we actually use these boxes. For example, when we say one, actually it's a box. When we talk, actually, they are boxes of sounds, you know, and it may contain meaning, it may just contain the delivery. Now, and when you look at logic, true and false, they are actually just boxes. And you go on and you look at accounting, debit, credit, they are boxes. Of course, the left side, what is the left side? It's a box. Right side is a box. And when we look at architecture, they are actually all boxes, but these are Euclidean geometrical boxes. And why they can be binded together, of course, this is Euclidean geometry. Now, and if you look at time, you know, clocks and so on, they are actually boxes. When you look at waves, they are actually boxes. Okay, and when you look at measurement, they are actually boxes again. Okay, and so I just want to let you have a feel of what you mean by boxes, what you mean by symmetry, why I can talk on these 2 topics for 40 years and never waver 40 years, and because I owe all the listener, why all these 40 years you confuse me. Okay, so I hope this will give you a clearer explanation of what digital world is like, and maybe where the future is hidden. I may not be able to tell you everything, but it's hidden there that you can explore yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goh. I've always considered you not only an entrepreneur and a technologist, but you are also a philosopher and a mathematician, and it's always great to hear from you. Mr. Goh started by sharing about Ramcharan and new rules for the digital age. He spoke about how information can be broken into boxes, shared his success story on symmetry at work, and he also shared about system side, technology side, data side, and his banking 360. So thank you very much, Mr. Goh, for that sharing. May I now invite our next speaker, Dato Henry Goh, who is coming in online, the CEO and founder of Macro Kiosk. Henry, over to you.
Yes, hello Tan Sri and hello everybody. Thank you for having me, KSI, as well as Tan Sri, for inviting me for this banking summit. Yes, it's always nice to be in this summit. I mean, I've been in this summit for many years, and obviously I've also heard from Mr. Goh for many years about his symmetry and mathematics. Of course, it starts to be very confusing until lately. I think that's good. I mean, in terms of MACROKIOSK per se, for my company, we have been around for about 20 years, and we have been also servicing many industries with our solutions and services. However, obviously, the biggest part of our revenue comes from the banking and financial industry. I mean, currently we are serving more than about 40 different banks across the region. Of course, most of them are in Malaysia as well. So through our experience dealing with many of these banks, obviously many of them, I should say all of them, are preparing themselves for the challenges ahead. I think some of them are like preparing very far ahead. Some of them are starting to have preparation in some form, but however, each of them are preparing it differently. And of course, the part that we see is that the only part that I see is that every one of them are afraid of is not really wanting to serve the customer better, but rather that they are afraid to be disrupted. They are afraid that new kind of players will come in, especially digital banks and things like that. And I think that is kind of the wrong perception in the sense that customers, I think banks should be in a way serve customers better and putting customers number one rather than afraid of being disrupted. Because disruption by itself only happens when users actually adopt those changes. If the users don't adopt those changes, in literal sense, there is no disruption at all. So talking about increasing competition, obviously, I think very soon in Malaysia, they will be announcing 5 digital banks. While this will create competition, I also believe that whatever and whoever get these banking licenses will also be facing challenges that current banks are facing as well. So I do not see there's significantly any difference, right? However, obviously current banks probably will have some baggages coming from the older environment that you have operated. But nevertheless, I think there are always ways to improve that. Increased competition is one area of challenge for banks. I think the other part that is also very important or very increasingly important in terms of banking would be consumer demand and expectations. I think consumers nowadays are very, very complicated people and they are also very complex. They would like to have many things and happening very quickly. There are also disruption coming in the form of new business models. Conventional bankings, like how you are doing your loans and your lending, and even the way you source for funding, I think generally would be very much different, especially with the onslaught of digital banking. The way they're going to get things done is going to be much, much different. The other key part would be also customer retention. With customers now having the ability to access to many different kinds of information very quickly, they can do comparison very quickly, and such they're able to switch very quickly from one bank to another, or one supplier to another, or one partner to another in terms of their financial needs. If you look at it, I mean, to be honest with you, for myself, I have a couple of mobile wallets on my phone itself. In the sense that whichever offers me the best discounts, probably I will move from one app to another very quickly. So customer retention is a very key area. And last but not least, I think this is a pertinent area would then be the regulations and security. Especially now there are quite a number of scams coming about. Especially scams are generally happening everywhere. Of course, banking would be the biggest target, I would say. And obviously, with the economy slow down due to the COVID-19 situation, scams actually increased. So scams became a big issue in terms of banking as a challenge. And obviously, security overall for banking is very, very important as well. So having said that, I'll talk about 5 different areas of challenge: increasing competition, changing consumer demands, new business models, customer retention, and regulations and security. Of course, there are also ways that I believe that banks can look at to improve in this area of challenges. First and foremost, obviously, I mean, MACROKIOSK, myself, we are coming from the technology background, is obviously, we would like to say that leveraging on technology is one of the best way of challenging yourself and challenging market demands. I think that's the most important part. So try to leverage on technology as much as possible. But however, I will also say that while leveraging technology is important, it's not about just leveraging the most advanced and the most future technology. I think it's about adopting technology and leveraging technology that can meet customer demands at this current moment. That's very important. Second part would be partnership to grow. I mean, as we have dealt with many banks as well, a lot of times there are banks that treat us as just a vendor. So they drive technology and then they ask us to supply what they want. I think that trend is something that we can move and we can change in the sense that vendors should then be your partners, vendors should be your innovators, vendors should be an environment that we can work on together as partners to build new technologies, because technology changes so quickly that there is not possible for banks or even very large companies to adopt new technologies or to create their own technologies, but then to grow technologies through partnership. I think that's the most important thing. The other part, I mean, the last two that I want to talk about, first, talent upskilling. I think there's no doubt. I think this is something that needs to be done, especially conventional banks where you have a lot of employees and it's our social responsibility to provide them a job. I think it's important to give them a job, but then continue to upskill them. Last but not least, obviously, is also innovation. Innovation in this sense is not about innovation in terms of technology, but innovation in terms of how you can redesign your business model. And one business model that I can see going forward that will be very enticing to consumers would be banking as a service, meaning that we want service that's on demand. Consumers want services that's on demand. They might be requiring multiple different services at different times, and they want it quickly and a very cost efficient way, for example. I mean, there are a lot of times that certain banks now are only offering services to their consumers only after they have built certain relationship. I think that is not something should happen. I mean, every customer should be equal, and then in that sense, provide them a service as a demand. Like for example, in the technology world nowadays, cloud computing is very, very active simply because it's an on-demand service. Even MACROKIOSK services that we provide, we are very much an on-demand as a service. So in that perspective, we believe banking, if we move towards this direction, will provide much more opportunities in the eyes of consumers. That's all I'd like to share today. I mean, wait for the Q&A, and yeah, thank you. Tan Sri, back to you then.
Thank you very much, Henry, for that sharing. You have spoken on a number of issues on customer service, customer retention, the fear of disruption. You have also highlighted the need for understanding consumer demand and having partnerships between banks and providers of services and talent upskilling and the importance of innovation. Thank you very much for those thoughts. My next speaker here is joining us from Hong Kong. I'm pleased to now hand the floor over to Mr. Matthew Chen. Matthew?
Thank you, Tan Sri Michael, for inviting me again, and thanks KSI for inviting me back to this very familiar virtual stage. You know, last time I remember when I was actually physically on this stage was exactly 2 years ago. Right? You know, obviously, given the pandemic situation, I can't go back to Malaysia. Just for those of you that do not know who is Sunline, we are actually the largest core banking vendor coming from China. We are currently serving more than 800 banks in China. And you know, I took the company, we ventured into the Southeast Asia region. We actually set up the hub, the base in Malaysia. We hired most of our staff internationally in Kuala Lumpur. Right now, based out of Malaysia, we are currently serving more than 30 banks in the Southeast Asia region. So that's who we are. Yeah, so today we're talking about future-proof banking, right? So, you know, let me maybe perhaps start by giving you our Sunline definition of banking 4.0. people probably heard of, the notion of banking anywhere, anytime, but not at a bank, right? So the key here is actually not at a bank, right? Because it's very, very simple, right? Nobody's actually going to file up, your banking app, for example. It doesn't matter how beautiful, how functional your banking app is to order a pizza, right? Nobody gonna launch your mobile app to, book travel, right? To hail a taxi and to order something from e-commerce providers such as Shopee or Lazada, right? Just to give you some examples. So our definition of 4.0 is actually made of 3 layers. So all of the things that I just mentioned are people's 360-degree of their digital footprint. Nowadays is actually what made of the outer layer. So the bank really need to change their perspective. Instead of being a very centralized, monolithic, Mr. Customer, you come to the bank really need to push their product and services and weave those products and services into people's 360-degree digital lifestyle, right? So, as a matter of fact, an analysis can easily show that on anyone's smartphone, the screen time, if you rank by screen time, your bank's mobile app is probably the least active, right? So by far, across the globe, the most active app on anyone's smartphone is probably social media, right? Rank as number 1, the most active app, right? And then maybe the second most active is taxi, travel, and then followed closely by e-commerce, right? So the moral of the story is the future-proven banking, the bank so-called banking 4.0. The bank really need to work very closely through technology such as Open API to weave their product and services into their partners' channels, right? Use their partners' app as their channels. Right, so that's really our first layer. But a lot of people actually stop there, right? People just concentrate on the outer layer. But actually, there are another 2 layers, they are equally important, if not more important, that made as a fundamental part of the banking 4.0, right? So the center layer, the second layer, I like to call it a layer that is really the brain, the thinking power of the bank. Right. This is actually where bank has to really improve in the so-called future-proven bank on this center layer. So, in a very simpler terms, we really need to empower the bank's technology stack, the so-called ABCD empowered. So AI, blockchain, cloud computing, and big data. Right. So in terms of the so-called, a lot of people probably heard of it these days, everyone's talking about eKYC. But I like to change that to, IKYC, not electronic know your customer better, but using artificial intelligence, for example. So being intelligent KYC, right? So using, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's a very common technology now that's deployed by a lot of banks in China these days, very commonly available, because machine learning can train the technology to be able to read, right? So using natural language processing power, now the machines can read as human beings, right? So machine learning can also train technology, the algorithm to be able to see. So using OCR technologies, now the machines can see, can read your national ID card, for example, right? Of course, machines can also hear, using machine learning, that technology, computers not trying to, analyze, the recording of the call centers, the voicemail, the voice files, right? So, but more importantly, machine, technology need to be deployed by banks to be able to think, to analyze, right? So especially in the area of risk management, alternative credit, scoring technology can be utilized so that, the banks can analyze and then approve a loan for any, Joe Bloke off the street. I'm talking about brand new customers that the bank, doesn't have any history with, you be able to use their digital footprint, use those big data, to use this AI technology to, to decode the unstructured data and complementary that unstructured data with the traditional, risk modeling technology that the bank normally has, so that you really, intelligently know your customer better, right? So the loans can be approved within minutes instead of days or even weeks, right? So this, center layer, it become more and more important, especially, in the post-pandemic. Obviously we're talking about economic recovery, using technology, using banks to really support, the economic recovery. This become increasingly important because as loans become increasingly important to support, both individuals as well as especially, the SMEs, to really give them a boost, to encourage them to support economic recovery, right? So the loans, hence the risk modelings, power with ABCD technology, going to become more and more important. And then, lastly but not the least, this is really the inner circle, is the heart of this banking 4.0, is where, the engine room is, right? So where all the products and services are defined by the bank. And then we used to talk about, SOA, service-oriented architecture 10 years ago, but now we're talking about MSOA, right? So microservices-oriented architectures, cloud, that is cloud native, that is empowered by blockchain, so that's distributed, so that this will enable the bank to push out a new product, come to market, everything, right, very quickly in a number of days, rather than weeks, to support, the outer layer, so that work very seamlessly and closely with all of the bank's partners, right? So next slide, please. So let me pass by giving you an example, right? So this is actually what you see. I know there's a lot of screenshots there, but this is actually, we actually launched our, example of open bank, right? Our open bank that is live and kicking. As I mentioned, because the social media definitely is the most active app on anyone's smartphone. So obviously in China, the most active social media app is WeChat, right? So what we did, we actually built open banking deck inside WeChat, by tapping to WeChat's mini program, which is neutral, right? So we established a so-called a B2B2C model. So we actually build all the three layers, virtualized in the cloud, in the WeChat Tencent cloud, within the WeChat in the middle. And on the left-hand side, we managed to launch together, connect with 30 banks. So this open banking example I'm showing you is not one bank. It's actually 30 banks on the left-hand side. If you look at the first column on the left-hand side, you see a lot of logos there, right? They're all banking logos. Let's take the first one, for example, the little red flower is actually a plum. This is the city flower of Nanjing. So this logo is actually for Bank of Nanjing, right? So along with Bank of Nanjing, there's another 29 banks that can publish their product and services. In this case, a lot of digital wealth management products, as well as micro loans. Over 60 products can be digitally published within the WeChat, right? So, if you're interested, anyone that uses WeChat can access any of these 60 products, and by just clicking on it. And then once you click on it, for example, this person is interested, for example, in a digital wealth management project 5.02, offering the annualized return. And by clicking on it, he or she will be able to, open an account electronically within the WeChat, by scanning, their national ID cards, by using all the ABCD technology that I mentioned. This is all readily available in the largest social media app, which is WeChat in China, right? Next slide, please. So let me just share, some of the stats, right? I mean, this is the last quarter in 2021 Q4, right? Obviously, everyone's went through the 2 years of pandemic, but this this platform is selling all of this digital wealth management products. As you can see, in the last quarter alone, 1.1 billion of digital wealth management product was sold on this open banking platform. As well as 860 million of microloans were issued by one of these 30 banks on this platform, right? So this idea of open banking is not by one bank; it's really joint force of 30 banks by slice and dice all of their product and services onto the the account level, onto the product level, and jointly they become a huge bank, so that give them a same level playing field against some other bigger banks in China, right? So this is really our example of open banking platform, and hopefully these ideas of our 3 layers open banking platform that is live and kicking in the largest social media platform, WeChat, can provide some reference and data points to the economic recovery, especially when it comes to support individuals, less advantaged underbanked individuals, as well as SMEs in countries such as Malaysia, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for sharing your Sunline Banking 4.0 model. You have highlighted the use of AI in analytical decisions, and you have also shared on your technology platforms. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Earoel Kennedy from Singapore. Over to you, Earoel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really, really excited to be here today. So we heard about mathematics and different technology. So the next little while, I want to bring us back to the most important things when you talk about getting ready for future, putting the people first. The life we know it since 2020, it's been kind of interesting. I still remember getting on a flight from Singapore to Manila, and the government decided to shut down the airport, Manila airports, while I was in the air. The moment I landed, the first thing I was trying to do was to get on the next flight back to Singapore. And I haven't got back to Manila since March 12, 2020. So how does it look like when we were driving the digital workforce transformation during COVID? And I want to set a context. And it's one thing for me to talk over slides, but another thing is I want to share with you one of a real case study, if that's okay. Let's hear it, how it's like to drive workforce transformation during COVID from Marina at Standard Chartered Bank.
Hi, my name is Marina, and I lead the design and enablement of the ServiceNow HR platform at Standard Chartered, and I'm the product owner of my HR. So we have so many success stories delivered in the past few years with ServiceNow. So we launched our digital front door portal together with our digital channel strategy, and that includes BA, so virtual agents, live chat, knowledge management. We also digitized lots of documents, more than 400 templates, which were previously an Excel form or a Word document form. They are now all online documents available as part of our catalogs. We created more than 200 workflows as part of our service offer. So we redesigned those services and then we automated and made them available as part of our catalog. We introduced the performance and analytics, campaigns, we implemented onboarding journey, all empowered by ServiceNow. But I think with the pandemic, the employees' expectations about their own digital experience at work has changed. So we really had to relearn how to really get the work done. And us as a team, we really had to challenge ourselves on how can we truly adapt and really rapidly respond to our employees' needs. And technology helped us building the hybrid ways of working. I think that technology is the new workplace. So ServiceNow plays a key role as our technology strategic partner that help us designing the workplace digital experiences, help us connecting people, connecting processes, workflows, help us communicate, collaborate, and really driving productivity. So the platform gives us the flexibility to design for our needs, design for our workforce needs. And the ServiceNow team really help us really maximizing the full potential of the platform. So it's an ever-evolving learning journey for us as well. And Future of Work Now program, it's a great example on how we enable these unified experiences. We use the platform survey and the performance analytics to understand the workforce hybrid work preference. Then we designed the dynamic workflows, really connecting processes and the workflows between employees and operations. We digitized all documents as part of this program. We introduced for the first time electronic signature. So you really get your documents available with one click. You e-sign and attach to the case, and it's automatically going to operations team to process. We leverage the platform also to drive employees' engagement. So we used a lot of campaigns extensively, used knowledge articles, guidelines to really drive that engagement. And the result is really a real consumer experience. And the adoption and the workforce engagement was more than 84% for the markets that we went live last year. So, and this is really a good example of adapting and responding to a new demand. But there are great opportunities for us to keep leveraging the application to really pace our digital transformation agenda with innovation, with solutions to improve the overall workforce experience. I really look forward to keep designing and enabling this experience with ServiceNow as part of our partnership and as part of our digital transformation agenda. Thank you.
Hope that gives you a little bit of a glimpse of how it's like to drive digital transformation during COVID. If you think about the past 2 years, it is all about remaining human in the very technology-driven world. I know that Marina was sharing a lot of things, digitalizing workflows and forms. It might not sound that exciting, but I love what she meant is that bringing that experience as part of the center of this transformation. You think about the past 2 years, even though amid the tragedy and uncertainty, we actually were riding on a very strong undercurrent of hope. We see like communities, individuals, they responded with empathy and strength across the globe. And if you look at like Malaysia, it's really a nation rising up, like what you've gone through. Ecosystems banded together, leverage their collective and complementary capabilities to make, like, to effect meaningful impacts in our society. And I love all this. I know that TikTok or Zoom videos, just think about that, like how people stay together even though we are apart. And amid the COVID, well-being became center and front for many organizations because of the whole focus on physical, mental, and financial security that became the paramount. Deutsche Bank, DBS, I know there are representations from here, from DBS here today, and even my colleague here, right? We have talked about Lake Axios, Silverlake Axios, also have offered holistic well-being initiatives to their employees. That became a huge focus. And in contrast to before COVID, we now have a greater appreciation for the fact that we humans can coexist with technology. And we are more powerful than ever together than any of us could be on our own. Consider digital banking, we've heard about that. as well as telemedicine, manufacturing, education, even grocery deliveries. How they drew on the power of integrated human and machine teams during the crisis. And organizations really have to focus, and I think one of the presenters already talked about the importance to invest in critical skills so then we can stay resilient throughout this crisis. The world also had the opportunity to see how resilient that we are as humankind, right? You see, the workforce had to really transform like fast. They assumed new responsibilities, and some of us even contributed to opportunities in different industries and different functions. And of course, we have actually moved to flexible work and hybrid work environments, which requires us really distribute the authority in order to drive agility. You think about a lot of organizations, they've shifted the power structures so that they can build the flexibility into their decision-making process. I do have another video because I figure, you want to hear examples and case studies. We have Hugo. He is the Managing Director and CIO for Human Resources at Untitled Chapter. He is going to share his view on how they have gone through, it's a quick one, this one, his points of view through the transformations, digital workforce transformation as well.
COVID has prompted us to reprioritize our digital investment portfolio. Whilst our response to COVID could have been purely defensive or reactive to keep the lights on during COVID, we took, at the early stage of 2020, an opportunity to redefine strategically our approach to collaboration and the workplace for the long term. We have partnered with a number of corporate functions, HR, property, technology, to define and enable flexible work around the organization, introducing new work patterns, communication, collaboration tools, with main focus on the employee experience.
So when we started 2 years ago, we thought this was going to be a short-term disruption with retail banking, right? Everybody here is interested about the finance and banking industry. But now, 2 years later, we all agree the future of work is going to look very different in the new normal. If you look at how do we stay connected, most of the studies have shown that employees will continue to stay in the hybrid work environments. So designing work to create that sense of a culture of inclusiveness will help us to increase that human connections. And now I have another quick clip, only 30 seconds, from Hugo again. Can we just hear from Hugo again, please?
Hybrid work in large distributed organizations like ours can only work if the processes and the workflows are global, clear, well-defined. Those must be enabled by a reliable, scalable, and adaptable technology layer, which can provide a consistent employee experience across markets, whilst also meeting the local requirements.
All right, that was the last video. But to build more responsive organizations, many organizations have started designing roles and structures around outcomes in order to drive agility and flexibility for the workforce. More than ever, building the skills for the future means that we have to reinforce the learning and development agenda through digital upskilling. I think one of the presenters talked about the digital upskilling. All the emerging technologies, I think we've heard a lot about it today already from the previous presenters. AI, VR, AR have opened doors for various applications in the HR domain. These technologies will help improve the HR functions from the recruitment, onboarding, training, and so much more. And as we heard from many of the articles have talked about the Great Resignation. This is probably a big topic so much in our region, we might not see it, but it's definitely coming up. This big quit, as we know, that people around the world seem to be leaving their jobs. They just had enough. And some of it is that as they rethink their priorities during the COVID pandemic, And in banking industry specifically, it's either you made so much money the past couple of years, or it's just that you have a aha moment in life. It seems like a huge consequences in the banking industry is a lot of bankers have achieved their FIRE number. So this is mathematics, sort of. FIRE stands for financially independent and retire early. So therefore, it is critical for us to continue to provide the opportunities for growth and development for our employees to stay in the workforce. So I know that I have to pass on the mic. As you have heard from Hugo, having a reliable and adaptable technology layer will help organizations such as Standard Chartered Bank to provide that consistent employee experience across various markets while meeting the local requirements. And I will be doing you a disservice by not calling out the very purpose of ServiceNow. The reason why this organization is created for is to be that consistent, reliable, and adaptable technology layer, so then we can support organizations like yours to stay through and be ready in the new normal. So that's pretty much what I have to share. I hope it's okay. That is a mix of slides and videos.
Thank you very much, Earoel, for the very interesting presentation. You have basically put humanity back into technology. And I think that's interesting going forward. And I think there's just one point that I want to summarize in your whole presentation, which was what you put up right at the beginning, remaining human in a technology-driven world. And I think that's a key learning point for all of us here. Thank you so much again. May I now move on to the last speaker for this session, Mr. Ling King Yao, who is a partner of E&Y.
Thank you, Dan Sri. Yeah, so we've heard from 4 different speakers, very different views, right? Somehow I've managed to summarize all of it, being a consultant, right? And taking a bit of Dan Sri's effort and work. So you can go over to my slides. We look at it, right? What we think is a future banking model, right? It really starts from on the left, right? A whole new business model. And Mr. Goh mentioned just now, right? It's a whole new world of supply, whole new world of demand, symmetry and parallel with one another, right? So you see, most of the banks have always been trying to target that unmet need, right? Try to do a thematic segment, right? And then that's really the supply side. If you can fill up that supply, right, that thematic segment, then the supply, you can capture that, right? Then on the demand side, they try to reimagine CX. I got this great product. I can get this right pricing. I can meet the demand of the market. I can get all of that, right? And the best way of doing it, in our view, right, from a business model perspective, leverage on your partners, right? Don't try to do it alone, right? SIPS is there already, a very cost-income ratio focus. Mobius is there already, the new digital banking, right? So leverage on that, get into a new business model, right? Don't only focus on your own current today's products and services. Then Henry spoke about an operating model that a bank needs to have, right? And again, think of how you want to work together with guys like Macro Kiosk, right? The design process now really has to start from a no-ops perspective, right? And I think he's really reimagined, right, how the whole thing works. And he's thinking through the virtual customer servicing end-to-end, right? No more bank. Of course, in Malaysia here, we got MySejahtera, no ops, right? If MySejahtera doesn't work for you, you're in big trouble because you've got to find some way to get it back working, right? Because they don't have a front desk, they don't have a branch, they don't have any way to service you. So it's a virtual customer servicing thinking through already, right? And the whole bank has been designed around that. Then Matthew, really from the technology perspective, he spoke really a lot around leveraging on the fintechs, right? Thinking through on the cloud, right? And open API, collaborating again with the market, right? And then he ended up with that high leverage on AI, machine learning. That's really the new data and the new goal, right? As we go towards, right? And trying to figure out, right, how to get into a whole AI and machine learning environment at the lowest cost again, right? And then being able to leverage on some of the technologies that Sunline will provide from there. And then finally, right, we miss Earoel, right? We talk about talent and the lack of talent because everybody wants to be financially independent and retire early, right? And that's what we see as well, right? And that's where our last bullet point is very important. It's not us sitting back and saying, why don't you want to work anymore, right? It's really thinking through how do we continue to attract, right? How do we attract innovation? How do we attract the millennials, right? So there's a purpose in what they want to do. right? And they want to be part of their organization, they want to be part of the bank, they want to be part of the FI, right? So that they contribute back. And I think that we've seen, right, as she said, the empathy over the last 2 years has grown so much. There's so much more that we can do together as a FI community, as a technology provider, as a workflow integrator, right, that we can then add a lot more value back into the financial ecosystem, right? So that's our view, right? If all these 4 things sort of come together, right, then, right, there can be a lot more innovation, right, a lot more new things that the banking and the financial services can do to add back into the larger ecosystem that we are here today. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ling. That was a very good summary of all the key 4 elements that we need to put in place to ensure success in the future. Thank you so much. That was a great summary. We have probably time for just 1 or 2 questions. There's just about 5 minutes left in our session. May I invite the first question? Or vote if there are any questions online that are posted? No? Anyone here would like to pose any question? It's a great opportunity to ask some questions of our 5 very distinguished speakers.
He's done a too good of a job summarizing. That's the problem. he's got everything wrapped up so nicely.
If there are no other questions, can I ask each of the speakers for just a 1-minute summary of what do you think are the main key success factors going forward in terms of managing technology and people and talent? Maybe with Mr. Goffers?
Yeah, finally, I think starting from human, actually everyone have their model, and you can actually break the model into 2 boxes. One is called achievement, the other one is called happiness. Now, so I believe everyone have their own mathematical model of so-called achievement and happiness. And of course, if you want to go into very detail, it's actually impossible. But of course, you actually really can build mathematical models on that. And I can't really dwell into it, but I think I'll sum it up here. So, you know, the filling up of these boxes is called filling the reality. In fact, if you look at architect, they draw boxes, but finally, when you build the building, it's actually those engineers, the workers that fill up the reality become a real construction and a real display. And so in terms of when you talk about, for example, happiness and achievement, you build the model first, then you fill up the reality and see whether you really can achieve it or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peng. Earoel, perhaps we'll go to you first before the online.
I skipped the line. So I would say that COVID-19 crisis led to change, and now we are operating in a new normal. In spite of all the disruptions and the restrictions because of lockdowns, we were able, most of the banks were able to serve their clients in a matter of a couple of the weeks. And then this is the special thanks to your IT infrastructure layer. But let's not forget, at the end of the day, like, it is a human-machine integrated world. As we move forward, it's leveraging the technology to elevate. And then we switch from thinking about human skills, think about what's unique about us, and then really extract the value, like going from skills to the capabilities that we have as human beings, which is the purpose-driven empathy, things that we do just so much better than the machines.
Thank you. Empathy is a very powerful word there. Henry, last words from you?
All right. I think talking about this, I think it comes from the perspective where it's very much from a supply-driven economy to now very much demand-driven economy. So I think we should always put our customers and consumer first in whatever that we are developing. I would say, while I'm a technology company, I really think that technology is not sexy. It's about how you use technology that's sexy. So it's not needed to have the best technology or the most advanced technology, but then must design and use the technology that will suit your customers and users. And nowadays, when we're able to drive our product and services to be very consumer-driven, based on what they demand, rather than what we're telling them they're supposed to have, what would be the future of how banking is supposed to be, I believe. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Matthew, any last words from you? Matthew, are you muted? He didn't get it. Okay, Ling, over.
Okay, thank you. And I won't try to summarize again everything. Yeah. So, but this time I think maybe appeal to the national agenda and also the things that we need to do for Malaysia and also wider for ASEAN, right? As we come out from the pandemic, there'll be a lot of need, right, from those that are less fortunate than us. So empathy with them, and then finding back the purpose, right, of why we need to do what we need to do. That will give us the motivation to try a little bit harder, right, for our customers, right, and also be a little bit better at what we do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've got a very interesting session.
Dr. Michael, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, Matthew, you are here. Okay, can you sum up?
Well, at least you let me say my last words, right? Hopefully I can speak again next time. Hopefully this is not my last words. I think, there are obviously a lot different, version of future-proven banking out there, right? But there's one common keyword I like to stress. It's all about collaboration, right? It's all about collaboration. Unlike China, China obviously have tech giants such as Alibaba and Tencent, which makes the building an ecosystem a lot easier. But Malaysia is sort of a lot more fragmented, right? So yes, everyone's digitalized, a lot of digital, footprints everywhere, but there are a lot of smaller, fintech companies out there. So which actually put more emphasis, more onus on banks, right? Because bank is a natural place, because as I mentioned, that both the inner layer, the heart, I call it, and as well as the brain layer, the middle layer is all belong to the bank, right? So it is actually the bank's responsibility to use that as a vehicle to collaborate with a lot of smaller fintech partners out there to combine to a digital ecosystem to support the recovery of Malaysian economy, right? So it's all about collaboration. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much. If I can just put one word in each of our four speakers, I think Mr. Goh Peng Wei, Symmetry, Ms. Earoel, your focus is on humanity, empathy. With Dr. Henry Goh, it's basically customer first, customer service. With Matthew, I think you talk about collaboration. And I think the key thing with Mr. Ling will be integration, how you integrate all four together. So we had a very interesting session. Please join with us to thank our four speakers here. And I'd like to also thank, we've got 104 people attending this conference virtually online. So to all our online participants, thank you as well. Thank you very much.